Probably the greatest football coach in NFL history, and you could sum up his philosophy in 9 words. Success lies in the success lies in the relentless execution of the basics. I'm talking about Coach Vince Lombardi. I mean, this guy was so good, he won 7 NFL championships in 9 years in the 1960s with the Green Bay Packers. When a team wins the Super Bowl, they are handed a trophy called the Vince Lombardi Trophy. That's how good he was. Now, Coach Lombardi, he didn't run complicated offenses or defenses. In fact, it was very simple. That was his philosophy. Keep things very simple. Success lies in the relentless execution of the basics. Now, we, human beings, we tend to complicate things. Yeah, we want to add layers to things and exceptions and nuances, and I know we need to do that in certain times. But this even creeps in sometimes to our walk with the Lord, where we tend to make things, harder or more exceptions or more layered, and we make it maybe a little more difficult and forget the basics, because the basics, the relentless execution of the basics, is where we end up being successful. We're going to look at that today. We're going to take a look at this in the Gospel of John. Now, John is a fascinating book to me. Okay, John writes very simply. It's easy to understand. It's not complicated. You read it and it's right there. It's pretty easy words. He doesn't use complicated Greek words. The sentence structure is easy. You compare this to the Apostle Paul. Like there's places in Romans like 6, 7, and 8. Man, you have to read that like 9 times to try to grasp what he's talking about here. But the meaning's usually pretty simple. John, on the other hand, it's easy to read, but boy, the meaning is deep. Now in John, we tend to, like your study Bibles and commentaries, are probably going to say there's 7 great I am statements in John, and there are. There's actually more than 7. We kind of like to do it that way, but there's more than 7, but 7 are the ones we tend to think of. See if I can remember them here. Okay, so we have the I am the light of the world. I am the door. I am the good shepherd. I'm the living bread. See, then you have I am the way, the truth, and the life. I am the resurrection and the life. And finally, we have the last one in John 15. I am the true vine. That's what we're going to talk about today. So if you got your Bibles, I want you to open them up to John chapter 15. Your Bibles or iPhones or iPads, it's okay if you're looking at your phone during this. I won't think you're really posting things on Facebook. John 15. We're going to read the first 8 verses. Now we're going to go back through and pick this thing apart. I am the true vine. My Father is a vine dresser. Every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away, and every branch that bears fruit, he prunes, that it may bear more fruit. You are already clean because of the word which I've spoken to you. Abide in me, and I in you, as the branch cannot bear fruit of itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. He who abides in me and I in him bears much fruit, for without me you can do nothing. If anyone does not abide in me, and he is cast out as a branch and is withered, and they gather them and throw them into the fire, and they are burned. If you abide in me, and my words abide in you, you will ask what you desire, and it shall be done for you. By this my Father is glorified, that you bear much fruit, so you will be my disciples. Now let me give you a little bit of context of what he's talking about here. From John chapter 13 through the end of chapter 19, that whole thing takes place in a period of 24 hours, okay? We tend to think that's over 3 years of ministry. No, it's 24 hours that takes place. John chapter 13, he starts out with this event that we tend to refer to as the Last Supper, okay? I find it unlikely the disciples thought of it that way. You know, like, hey, you hear what we're doing tonight? Yeah, we're going to go have the Last Supper. I just kind of doubt that they had any concept of it. Of course, he does. And he knows this is the last time I have these guys together. Okay? Just these 12, and Judas leaves pretty early in that, so it's really 11. This is the last time they're together. Yeah, I know after the resurrection they get together, some other things. There's other people involved in it too, but this is the last time together. There are things he wants to communicate with them to make sure they know before this time of his in his earthly ministry is finished. Now, by the time you get to John 15, we're about halfway through all this stuff. Oh, and by the way, something else. Really, from John 13 on, there's no miracles of his. You have the servant that has his ear healed later on this fact night, and of course the resurrection, but there really isn't much anything that happens from a miraculous way from John 13 to John 19. Up until John 13, a couple different times things happen, and John would say, or Jesus would even say, my time has not yet come. Or John would say, his time has not yet come. You get to chapter 13, and it changes. Jesus says, yeah, my time has come. Well, John actually tells him, yeah, Jesus knew his time had come. So this is different now. Now, here's, what I'm going to tell you now is not necessarily biblical. It's the Jeff Millslagle paraphrase version. Okay, so here's what I figure is happening. Okay, so because chapter 15's kind of different from 14 and 16. They're kind of all together. They've done the what we call communion thing. They've even done a foot washing thing in John 13, and there's even denominations. I grew up with one. They made a big deal about foot washing, taking communion. But anyhow, so that's happened in John 13. And they're kind of sitting around relaxing, probably, and he's sharing with them. And I picture him reaching over, grabbing a cluster of grapes, pulling it out, pops one out, chews on a little bit, sits it back in the bowl and says, I am the true vine. Look at verse 1. I am the true vine. My Father is the vine dresser. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb and tell you something here. If you can get this verse in your head and get your hands, arms, mind wrapped around this thing, what this means, this is going to solve a myriad of your problems when it comes to walking in a Christian life. It's two phrases. I want to look at these individually because they are really deep here. Simple words to read, deep meaning. I am the true vine, he says. What does that imply? There's false vines out there. He's warning us, there's false vines. I am the true vine. It's interesting, I looked this verse up in about as many English versions as I could find. I think I ran across 27 or 28 of them. All of them but two translate it this way. And the two that don't say real. And the word can mean that. It's usually translated, though, as this, true. It means, what? Solid, real. There's non-concealment. What you see is what you get. It's there. I am the true vine. When I was a kid, I don't remember much of the details surrounding all this, but this I remember. I was probably 8, 9 years old. And I went with my grandfather to go get some lumber. I have great love for my grandfather. Okay, great, wonderful first name, Sterling. Oh, love that name. Sterling Millslagle. How awesome is that? Anyhow, so I'm with him. I don't remember if my brother, anybody else was, but I know it was him and I, and he wanted to buy some lumber. Now, my grandfather, I'm going to call him Grandpap because that's what I did. You might say he was frugal. Others might say he was cheap, okay? Now he grew up, him and my grandmother, they got married in the heart of the Depression. I mean, they were really dirt poor. In fact, when he was 16 years old, he was kicked out of his house by his parents, not because they didn't love him, but because they couldn't afford to feed him. Okay, this is how hard it was. A big family, and he was the oldest. You're 16, you're on your own, dude, because we got to take care of the little ones. I mean, hard, okay? That's what he grew up in. So when Grandpap bought stuff, it was a big deal. He usually had board and junk and stuff around the house that he could always build. He was building stuff. But this time, for whatever reason, and I don't remember what he was building, we went to the lumber mill, not the lumber yard, where it was. He wanted to go to the mill, the sawmill. So remember going there. I'm a little kid. This is a great place to be when you're 8 years old, okay? It's loud. big old saw going, dust flying everywhere. I mean, this was awesome. I'm looking at trees getting cut, and I'm like, this is so cool. So Grandpap gets got one of the guys he's working with, or telling him what he wants, and he said, okay, we just cut these boards today, and if you look at them, see if you want. And he'd pick it up, and he'd hold it, and he'd look down. Nope, that one's not true. Get another one. Yeah, that one's true. That's working. And we'd go through this till we got his, 3, 4, 5 boards, whatever it was. Because he wanted boards that were true. No imperfections. No funny curves in them. No goofy knots he couldn't work around. Whatever. It was true. That's what he wanted. That's kind of what this means. I am the true vine. The real one. There's a lot of false ones out there. There's a real one. Okay, so as we were singing, we sang a song up here. This is the last line. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. We pour out a praise to you only. Why only? Because of this verse. He is the true vine. There's all sorts of false vines out there. There's things that want to distract you, things you get set off course with. And he's saying, no, I am the true vine. Relentlessly pursuing excellence. Success comes when you relentlessly pursue the basics. This is a basic. He is the true vine. That's the first phrase. The second phrase of verse 1 is, my Father is the vine dresser. Now, this gets a little complicated here, and we talk members of the Trinity and doing different things. We think of them as 3, but they're 1, and you think of 1, you have the other 2, and you're not just talking to 1, you're talking to all 3. So I have an orthodox view of the Trinity, okay? But in this case, I want you to picture it this way. We got the Father is the vine dresser. What does a vine dresser do? Well, he takes care of the vine, right? Waters it, nourishes it. Maybe he protects it. Maybe you build a little, like fence-like thing around the, where the vine is so the critters don't get at it and whatever you need to do with it. Father is the vine dresser. The Father is in control. The Father is in control. You can rest in the fact, not only is Jesus a true vine, but the Father is the vine dresser. He is the one in control. It is not fate. It is not luck. It is not tarot cards. It's not a fortune teller. It's not the stars. Now, as much as I love stars, and you hear me talk about stars a lot, that's astronomy, okay? That's good. Study the stars. I think stars are fascinating. The clockwork precision of things, and it's fascinating to me. However, the stars do not control my destiny, okay? I don't look to the stars for wisdom. Well, what do I do today? I got to consult my chart and see where Orion is, and I can figure that. No. The stars do not control my destiny. Now, I was going to just kind of move off from this, but I ran across a stat here. It came out June 2nd, so just earlier this month. It comes from the Pew Research Organization. And it shocked me when I read this. 27% of Christians in the U.S., we can debate how committed Christians they are, but 27% of the people that claim the name of Christ consult on a regular basis horoscopes, tarot cards, fortune tellers, and yes, the stars. 27%. No wonder we're in a mess. That verse fixes this because Jesus is the true vine, there's nothing else, and the Father is the vine dresser. That's the one that's in control. That's the one you're looking towards. Okay. Now, we're going to come back to that because we're going to hit this a lot. This is all over the place. In fact, this passage and even the rest of the chapter of John, I believe you can sum up in this verse. If you grasp this verse and the meaning of this, you're going to be a long way to being a successful disciple of the Lord. Just doing that. Okay, verse 2. Every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away, and every branch that bears fruit he prunes, that it may bear more fruit. The first part of verse 2 I don't like very well, nor do I like verse 6 when we get there. I don't particularly like that. I got to tell you, I'm not exactly 100% sure how that applies and what that means. All I know is it's a bad thing, and I don't want to do this. I don't want to be a branch that gets pruned off. Or excuse me, I want to be a branch that gets chopped away. I do want to be a branch that gets pruned, because that's the second part of it. Every branch that bears fruit, he prunes. Why? That it might bear more fruit. So I grew up not in the country, okay? And I didn't grow up in a big city. It's a small town. And, my mom and dad had gardens, usually a big garden. And Dad grew tomatoes and corn and beans and peas and all sorts of horrible things. And I had to, water and weed and take care of. Gosh, I hated that so bad. Anyhow, so that's what I had to do. We did not grow grapes, okay? So I don't know anything about grapes. My wife and I, we move into like a first real house that we were in. We rented it, and and it was in the country, and the back of it had this cool fence thing where it had grapevines on it, all right? And our landlord told me, hey, you can just take grapes off that thing. They're really good. All right. And I noticed they were at first, but then they seemed like there were less and less grapes. Didn't think much about it. Till he actually visited me one day. They were looking at some stuff, and he sees that thing, and he says, hey, Jeff, that thing will produce more grapes if y'all prune it a little bit. And I went, you do what? Prune, yeah, you cut some of it away. I had never heard about this before. So we did that. Boy, he was not kidding. That thing produced some stuff. Why? Because it was pruned a little bit. Okay, now look, pruning. Yeah, sometimes it's uncomfortable. In fact, the word prune here in Greek is pretty simple how it is, but in Hebrew, the word prune is actually pretty enlightening. It's used a couple different ways. The Hebrew version of it here. Okay, it does mean in Isaiah the ripening of almonds. It's also used in Psalms particularly. We translate it as two words. We'll say deal bountifully. In fact, Psalm 119 verse 17 says, deal bountifully with your servant that I may live and keep your word. That word, two words, deal bountifully, do mean prune. But it also can mean something else. It means to wean a child. So a child is weaned. What does that mean? Well, they're moving on. They're growing. They're maturing. They're no longer just living off their mother's milk, but they're now able to take some solid food. It's a good thing. It's a sign of growth and maturity. It's the same word here. It's pruning. So when God is pruning you and you feel like you're being pruned a little bit, it's a good thing. I know it's uncomfortable and you may not really like it, but in the long run, it's a good thing. Well, why? Because we're going to bear more fruit. How does that happen? Because of verse 1, because we're attached to the vine, because Jesus is the true vine. Man, okay, verse 3. You are already clean because of the word which I have spoken to you. Remember, Jesus is now teaching them, and he's showing them, yeah, you're clean with this. Look, you know, I think you all know this, but sometimes people get mixed up, folks you think of. You want to invite them to church, and they're like, well, I got to get my life cleaned up first before I can do that. No, it doesn't work that way. No, it's the word that cleanses you. He'll take care of those things, okay? Don't freak out over that. Verse 4. Oh, verse 4 is awesome. Abide in me. Now, watch how many times the word abide shows up. Abide in me and I in you, as the branch cannot bear fruit of itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. Okay, 3 times in that one verse, the word abide is used. And if you notice when we read through the rest of it, it appears, 4 more times? 7 times in just a handful of verses. And in fact, I didn't read verses 9 and 10. The word abide is used 3 more times. You got 10 times in a space of about 8 verses where this word abide is used. It's not an English word we use much of. John loves this word. In the whole New Testament, the word abide, the Greek word abide, is used 119 times. Over half of those, way over half of those, is used by John. He uses a lot of them here in John. He uses them in John 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John, and he uses it in Revelation. It's abide. What does this mean? Okay, it basically means to stay in place or remain in force. Anybody own a dog in here? A couple of you all own dogs. I know you did, Charlie. Yeah, okay. We used to, but we don't anymore. You get a dog. What's one of the first things you teach it? You teach it to sit, and what's the other command? Stay, right? And you might use a certain tone of voice. You might point to it or something, and you'll say, stay. Okay. And you want to get the dog to learn to stay in place while you go off and you do something else, and the dog's there are nervously wanting to go with you, but they stay in place because you've given it the command and they know what that means. And then you finally release it, and he's all happy. That's what this word abide means. Stay. Remain in place. Stay. It's in force. You stay there. So Jesus is saying, you got to abide in me. You got to be attached to me. Why? Because he's the true vine. It's verse 1. That's why we do this. And don't get yourself attached to the wrong things. Abide in him, because he is the true vine. All right. This continues, verse 5. I am the vine, you are the branches. Here's where we appear. I am the vine, you are the branches. He who abides in me, and I in him, bears much fruit. We wish it would stop right there, but it doesn't. For without me, you can do nothing. There are basically two schools of thought on this verse. One of them, the second part of that there, one of them kind of goes like this. Okay, God's given you a brain and creativity, and he's allowed you to figure it out, and you've worked hard for what you've had, and you've had years of schooling or years of work, and you're an expert in your field, so that's kind of you doing that. That's the one school of thought. I'm not in that one. The other one says, yeah, I'll acknowledge all that stuff, but who gave you the ability to do this stuff? Who gave you the ability to create? Who gave you the ability to be able to sit in classrooms and school and college for years on end? And some of you have done that, okay? And I have tremendous respect for you doing it. You got letters behind your name, you're like really smart. Yeah, that's awesome, okay? Or maybe you're an expert in your field. You've been doing the same thing 20, 30, 40 years or so. You know what you're doing. But who gave you the ability to do any of that? I think it's the Father. Why? Because he's the vine dresser. Yeah. I think it's the Father that did this. I would much rather get to heaven and have the Lord tell me, Jeff, all that stuff that you attributed to me, that wasn't me at all. That was all you. I'd much rather have that happen than the other side. Get there and the Lord says, you took credit for that and that and that. That was all me, dude. I wasn't anything with you. I don't want that. I don't want that conversation. So I am going to lean towards the idea I can't do anything without him. Now look, I know I've made mistakes in Bible interpretation over my years. And I know the evangelical church has done that. But you know what, when I really find out? When I've made mistakes in Bible interpretation, it's usually because I have not taken the scriptures literally enough. We want to discount them and go somewhere, and that's when we generally have problems. We want to take them literally. Now, without me, you can do nothing. Well, I woke up this morning. I didn't need the Lord to do that. Really? You were unconscious for 6, 7, 8 hours. How did you get awake? How come you didn't die overnight? I know it sounds awful, but how'd that happen? Well, I set my alarm clock. Really? You don't know people that have slept through alarm clocks? Come on. Well, I was able to drive here today. Good heavens, you're driving anywhere. You got to have the Lord on your case, on your side on that one, man. Now, I am falling into the camp of taking that very literally true. Without me, you can do nothing. And part of that comes back to verse 1. He's the true vine. My Father's a vine dresser. Get my hands wrapped around thing. That's what I want to believe. Okay. Well, let me show you something. Before I move on, I want to show you something. Turn to Proverbs chapter 16. Proverbs chapter 16. Because I think this understanding of without him you can do nothing, I think it's reflected a bunch of places in Scripture. Here's one of them. Proverbs 16, verse 9. A man's heart plans his ways. But the Lord directs his steps. Yeah, you make the plans. You think it through. That's awesome. That's great. You do it. But the Lord's behind the scenes directing all this. Man's heart plans his ways. The Lord directs his steps. I would much rather attribute anything I have ever accomplished in the Lord to something I've done. I know me. I'm really not that smart. But the Father is the vine dresser. Dude knows what he's doing. I'm going to rely on him. Okay, all right. Now back to John. Verse 6. This is one of these. There's a number of these in Scripture. And a lot of them that Jesus says that are scary. This is one of them. If anyone does not abide in me, he is cast out as a branch and is withered. They gather them and throw them into the fire, and they are burnt. I don't ever want to be in this. I don't know how long of not bearing fruit you get until it starts to get, cut off and throw. I don't know. I don't want to explore that. I don't want to know. I do not want to be this. I want to be someone who is constantly attached to the vine, because he's the true vine. That's what I want to be attached to, learn from him, apply that in my life, and trust him because the Father is the vine dresser. Now, I ran across a quote here a while back. See, Todd is really smart and can do quotes off the top of his head. I butchered the Vince Lombardi quote. Took me 4 times to get it right here. So this one I have written down so I can read off that because I'm not as smart as Todd. Here's guys from Garrett Kell is this guy who wrote this, okay? And he says this: one of the most dangerous things a Christian can do right now is neglected Bible reading. I would say Bible study, but that's between him and me. Thousands, and this is important, thousands of voices are attempting to tell you how to think. We need more scripture and less social media. Garrett Kell pastors a large church somewhere in Virginia, I believe. I periodically read his stuff. Yeah, I got thousands of voices out there telling us how to think, what to do, social media. You get up in the morning, what's the first thing you do? You're checking Twitter or you're looking at Facebook or something and you're doing all that. No. Those are thousands of voices. Get verse 1 in your head. Get attached to the true vine. The true vine, not this other stuff. Get attached to the true vine. Okay. I know, we're going long. I'm going to get through this here pretty quick. Okay, verse 7. If you abide in me, and my words abide in you. See, verse 6 is rough. Verse 7 is awesome. If you abide in me and I in you, you will ask what you desire, and it will be done for you. Hot dog. Yeah, I like that verse. Yeah. You abide in me and I will you. You will ask what you desire. You know, your desires do tend to change the more that you're attached to the vine. Things that I really desired in my 20s, I really don't care for now. It's like, gosh, I'm so glad that didn't happen. If you abide in me, and my words abide in you, you will ask what you desire, and it will be done for you. It doesn't mean, though, this is all going to be pleasant. Remember, the Father's pruning. The vine dresser's pruning things in your life. So sometimes you're producing fruit, you're serving the Lord, you think things are going great, and all of a sudden you run across some stuff, and it's hard, and it's messy, and it's a little uncomfortable. Reminds me of another story when I was a kid. This time I was in high school, and I worked on a dairy farm. Now this was probably some of the most work I've ever done, hardest work, okay? I worked on a farm for Old Man Heatwall. No, we didn't call him that to his face, but that's what we called him, Old Man Heatwall. He had, I think, 5, maybe 6 kids. They were all gone except for the youngest 2. One of them was my age, and then his daughter, the youngest one, she was about 2 years younger than us. Okay, so basically it was Old Man Heatwall, his wife, their youngest son, and their daughter that took care of the milking cows. They had about 100 milking cows. Now, this is back in the old days where it wasn't automatic. They didn't, actually do that with the cows, but they did attach these like suction cup things that, they did on the cows, and they took care of that. So Old Man Heatwall would hire guys to come in, usually guys, to come in and help, because his sons were all grown and gone. We did not touch the milking cows. We handled everything else, though. So there's probably a little over 200 total cows on this on this farm. Calves and cows that were not doing milk right then and whatever. Okay, so what's the big thing we did besides feeding them? Yeah, cleaning out stuff, right? Okay, so Old Man Heatwall had made these little rake-like things, and they had kind of like a bulldozer sort of scraper thing on the front of it. Pushing the cow stuff, out, okay. And we get that out of the pens, and then Old Man Heatwall would sit up in his tractor and had a big blade on the front of it, and he just pushed all the manure out, and then dump it in the manure pile, okay. And that happened often. I remember one particular Saturday, it was ripe. It's hot. The cows are all out of the barn now, and we're cleaning the barn out. And, Old Man Heatwall would provide oak coveralls for you, and these boots, came up to your knee. I mean, they were rubber boots. And by the way, he paid us well. Every single day you worked there, though, you got steak. His wife made steak, and I never was there once and didn't have steak in some form of potatoes. The woman could cook, okay. But anyhow, so I remember we're doing this on a Saturday, and scraping this thing, and this just smells just bad. And I remember stopping, Old Man Heatwall's on his tractor up here, and we didn't call him that to his face, by the way, but that's what we called him. I was like, oh man. Mr. Heatwall, because that's what we call it. Mr. Heatwall, well, this smells awful. How do you get used to this? And I'll never forget this. He sits in his tractor and he does this thing. He goes, greatest smell in the world. Now, I think he's teasing me because he would do that. I think he's teasing me. And I'm thinking, oh, come on, how do you get used to this? He says, no, you don't understand. Because that smell tells me my cows are producing milk. And when they produce milk, I'm making money, and that's how you get paid. Whoa. Okay, now all of a sudden this changed my whole perspective on this. Like, oh, this is actually a good thing. Turn to Proverbs again, Proverbs 14, because the Bible talks about this. Proverbs 14, verse 4. This is almost my life verse. Where no oxen are, the trough is clean. That's what we want. We tend to like things nice, clean, and happy, and pristine, and all that. But what happens? Well, there's no ox. There ain't nothing happening. But much increase comes by the strength of an ox. Yeah, sometimes you have to deal with stuff in your life, okay? But it's a good thing because that means you're growing. God's pruning you. You're effective. You're producing more fruit. It's a good thing. So when you get back to John, what we talked about here in John, you get back to John 15, verse 7, if you abide in me and my words abide in you, we will ask what you desire and it shall be done for you. It doesn't mean this is going to be perfect and wonderful and everything's going to be real cool and you're going to be just happy and glorious all the time. It does mean you're going to be effective. You're going to be doing something for Jesus because you're attached to the true vine. And the Father is the vine dresser. It sums everything up. Last verse. By this, my Father is glorified, that you bear much fruit, so you will be my disciples. We're not glorifying ourselves. We don't bear fruit to glorify ourselves. Man, that's a hard lesson to learn. We do not glorify ourselves when we bear fruit. We want to bear fruit, that's true, but who's that doing? That's pointing to the vine. It's pointing to the Father. By this my Father is glorified, that you bear much fruit. So you will be my disciples. So, as I end with this, put verse 1 back up there for me, will you, Tony? I am the true vine. My Father's a vine dresser. Those two phrases, simple, easy to read, relatively simple and easy to understand, tremendous, deep reservoir of meaning here. Always keep in mind, he's the true vine. None of this other false falderall that runs around here with us. Get yourself attached to the true vine. And always remember, the Father is in control. He's the vine dresser. It's not fate. It's not your lucky rabbit's foot. It's not anything like that. It is the vine dresser, the Father. The Father is in control. And if you do this, you will be like Coach Vince Lombardi saying, success lies in the relentless execution of the basics. And this is what we need to bottom line our life in. Would you stand here with me? Father,